Where have the Indians done very well, the diaspora Indians? It is really US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, because I think Indians are far more comfortable with the English-speaking world. It's been largely open for immigration, notwithstanding the problems that we have. It's been far more open to the Indians.
This week's column, you've spoken about the AUKUS, AUKUS, which is Australia, UK, and the US defense partnership, particularly with to transfer technologies and help Australia build nuclear-powered submarine. They've announced the roadmap. What do you make of now that 3 out of 4 Quad members seem to be in, with the exception of India, Australia, and Japan certainly, with the US in terms of the US helping them upgrade their defense capabilities in a very direct manner. How do you think, and that contrasted with China now in the Middle East trying to say, oh, we're a different kind of superpower. This accusation that China keeps making that Quad is Chota NATO and AUKUS is just a sort of subset or another addition, another anti-China Cold War-like grouping.
No, I think what the Chinese need to know is they have frightened their neighbors. That China's unilateral actions vis-a-vis Japan, vis-a-vis its neighbors in South China Sea, its official policy that it will annex Taiwan, if necessary, by use of force, and its actions in Himalayas have actually compelled its neighbors to find ways to balance it. Because if you remember, India, Japan, and everybody loved Deng Xiaoping's China. Yeah. And as China was rapidly growing under Hu Jintao and before that in Jiang Zemin, people had no problems dealing with China. Something has changed under Xi Jinping. And I think our Chinese friends must recognize that their assertive posture on the border and the territorial issues has pushed the neighbors to find ways to balance. And I think the way they treated Australia, which is a major economic partner, by imposing sanctions. So I think the Chinese felt they can get away with anything. And what we're seeing is really a pushback against that. So Quad is one kind. Quad is not a military alliance. But the AUKUS is clearly a very, very military alliance. And of course, this involves Britain, which is not part of the Quad. Yeah. So I think this is a different format. Yeah. But my sense is there won't be a single, while the Chinese propaganda says Asian NATO, I don't think you're going to have a single format structure in Asia. You're going to have a large number of concentric or overlapping structures which are going to emerge along with the pre-existing ASEAN and its related structures.
So in much of the article, or not much, a significant part of the article, which everyone should read in the IndianExpress.com and probably in the description of wherever you're watching this video. Do you think the AUKUS and even the Quad to an extent opens up that kind of space for the Indian government diplomatically to engage and get more assistance or more technology transfer for India to then look seawards in a more comprehensive manner? Because our general defense orientation has at least been more land-based.
I think the problem is India has to make the choices. I mean, I think what's happened after partition and independence has been defending the new frontiers in the north with Pakistan, East Pakistan that time, and West Pakistan. Then you had the China become a neighbor by occupation of Tibet. So I think the war 62, 65, 71, and then more recent military confrontations with China, I think have compelled a predisposition to land borders. And in fact, there was no debate on land demands until very recently. That is the idea that, look, as India looks outwards, it can actually use its own assets. I mean, firstly, you develop your own assets. Yeah. I mean, that you don't need anybody to strengthen your position in Andamans and, Lakshadweep and in your own neighborhood. But I think until recently, the Andamans was largely shut down. It was treated as a closed zone rather than as a stepping stone to larger strategy. So I think, and the problem, of course, is the distribution of resources. Much of the money of the defense budget, in terms of equipment, goes to the Air Force, and the rest of it goes largely to Army. And I think Navy rarely got more than 18-19% of the budget. And I think, so we have to make that judgment. And my sense is defense budget has shrunk. So therefore, you're not able to really take full advantage of what you have. So by necessity, what we've seen emerge for the Navy is a coalition strategy. If you're a naval planner today, I mean, you know that you're not going to get the money that you would like to. Therefore, partnering other countries, you can maximize your capabilities. And I think that's what we've seen. India's participation in the maritime security, the Malabar exercises, the engagement with the US, Japan, Australia, France, all this point to a coalition strategy. And I think that's good for now, but over the longer term, Admiral Raja Mohan is absolutely right. We need to build on our maritime capabilities because you are free seas, you're not constrained, and you can actually offer something to others as well as partner with others while you're really trapped in the Himalayas. So I think we have a challenge, but the navalists find it very hard to convince the defense ministry and the national planners.
But as you've written in the past about, and this sort of the Anglosphere, New Zealand, Australia, England, of course, and Britain now coming in a big way post-Brexit, you can say that presence in Asia, like you point out, for the first time probably since the Suez Crisis on this kind of scale. India has traditionally been a bit wary. Maybe it's because of colonialism, maybe it's a Cold War hangover. How does India fit into this kind of now growing? Because we have, I mean, soft power ties as well as historical ties, it's cultural ties. It's easier for us. We have more students in Australia than certainly in France. And whereas, ties have not gone, that sort of leveraging that, or that doesn't seem to have translated into strategic and diplomatic closeness. Do you think this kind of moment is a moment ripe for that? And what is it? What kind of engagement should we look at in this sort of Anglosphere going forward?
No, my sense is already our engagement with Anglosphere has dramatically changed. I mean, since the end of the Cold War, through the Cold War, and as long as the Pakistan was a dominant concern, India had this, we had this irritable relationship with Britain on the Pakistan question, the Kashmir question. But over the last 20 years, I think first it was the United States that really reached out to India, ended the policy of equating India, Pakistan, strongly supports India in Asia in relation to China. So I think the US has changed its policy. And since certainly in the last decade and more, we've seen the dramatic expansion of India's relationship with the US. With Australia, we've seen the finding of the natural synergies, where India's economic growth, Australia's natural resources form a component. India is also reaching out to New Zealand next to Australia. And Canada, we are now negotiating a free trade agreement because Canada too is rich in mineral resources. And stepping back, you also see where have the Indians done very well, the diaspora Indians.
Yeah.
It is really US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, because I think Indians are far more comfortable with the English-speaking world. It's been largely open for immigration, notwithstanding the problems that we have. It's been far more open to the Indians. So I think today we are, unlike in the Cold War, where the natural synergy between India and the Anglosphere was stymied by the Cold War logic and regional calculations. Today, I think both the strategic interests as well as the people-to-people commercial interests are today bringing India closer to the Anglosphere. And my sense is there is a historic opportunity here to build on. I think even with Britain, under the present government, the relationships have significantly improved. We plan to work closely with Britain in the Indo-Pacific. So my sense is this is a significant moment, as you rightly said.
Great, sir. Thanks so much. I think we should let people read the piece, which has a lot more in it than just this conversation. Do read the piece, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.